From Las Vegas, it's Dry Heat with Mike Davis.
I am joined with a guy who's a maven in the restaurant space, a restaurateur, but he's also a published author, and it's not his first go-around. He has a new sports book out called Extra Innings, a memoir of fathers, sons, fandom, and fate. But his first book was all about the restaurant business. It's the great Jeff Benjamin. He, you know him if you're out here in Las Vegas. He's a legend in Philadelphia, but in Vegas, Vetri Cucina at the Palms, you know, Fiorella at Durango, Asteria at Red Rock Resort. So any of those places you've been, it's because of this guy right here and his great partner, Marc Vetri. But we're here with Jeff Benjamin. Jeff, you got the all the Cubs gear on. You got the Ernie Banks in the background, the Wrigley stuff. Tell us, how does it feel? Extra Innings. The book is finally here. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a labor of love. We think about doing things like this every once in a while. I think all of us have our thing that we want to do. Oh, if I ever have the time, this is what I'm going to do. And I think I mentioned this to you the kind of the day I met you, and this was years ago. Hey, I've got this plan to write this book, and I think you probably left that conversation like that guy's full of it. But I have a tremendous love of my Chicago Cubs, and anyone who's a Cub fan probably feels that way. And a lot of things happened. The loss of my father over 2 decades ago, who never got to see them play in the World Series, taking my kids to the World Series. As you said, Mark and I started a business in 1998, and my first child was born in 2003, and during that time, all we did was work. So I started to miss a lot of things and realized I didn't want that to be my legacy. So the goal in life is to spend extra innings with your children or with your family or any loved one. And so I decided to write a book about always praying for extra innings in anything you do.
Well, let's talk about this and dig deep in. And I want to, get into your whole story, but I didn't think you were full of it at all, because I'll tell you exactly why. Because you had in your wallet the actual ticket from the game that you went with your father, and you still have it in pristine condition in your wallet, and you showed me a PDF, and you're actually working on the book. So a lot of it had already been written, but now it's actually published. You can go on Amazon, you can get it in paperback. It's a beautiful thing. But let's talk a little bit, because there's a lot of similarities here. I think to get a book published, to be in the restaurant space, you know what it takes to be a grinder and to get things done. But I think the emotional component to the story is really sweet. So let's start there. So Extra Innings, it's a fascinating thing. My producer, he worked in Ottumwa, Iowa, actually.
Oh, there you go.
You're a Davenport, Iowa guy.
You know who else is from Ottumwa, Iowa?
Who's from Ottumwa?
Radar O'Reilly from MASH.
Oh, okay. See, my producer's nodding right now. And my producer's way too young to even know what MASH is. But I will say this. It's a special story because your father, and we don't have so much time, but your father was, a rabbi, and he was practicing in Davenport, Iowa, and he was a social justice kind of warrior guy, and he actually lost his job. And it's crazy that I'm even saying this on an interview with a guy as young as you are, but there was a lot of civil rights issues going on at that time, and he stood up for African-American students, lost his job, and had to get transferred to Long Island, New York. But all in this time growing up in the Midwest, I'm sure you became a fan of the Cubs. So paint us a little bit of a picture of the type of man your dad was, and it was hard to connect with people of that generation. So baseball was your connection.
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. My father, he was, I always say he was the greatest father I'll ever have. Right. But we're all flawed human beings. And one of the things that he dove headfirst into his job. He loved being a rabbi. He loved ministering to people of all faiths. And because he was a rabbi in Davenport, Iowa, he ministered to people with about a 75-mile radius and spent a lot of time in interfaith relationships. So he ended up becoming the chairman of the Civil Rights Commission in Davenport. And it's hard for me to even fathom, in my lifetime that there was racial injustice. And look, there still is racial injustice.
Yes, of course.
That said, such overt and such systemic within a school district that there was a need for someone like my father to speak up. And I'm glad he did, because it taught me and my sisters quite a bit of lessons. But Um, you know, he was always in a tie and always in a suit, always very well presented, except for when we walked through the doors of Wrigley Field. And you almost saw him relax, and he very rarely relaxed
And
when you walked through the door. And it
it's
was just such,
it,
I loved watching him be that guy.
that's so fascinating, and I think it's cool when you get to see your parent in another light, and you get to see, it's a because it's certainly a cool thing to see your parent, be in work mode, but it's also a special thing to see them be a human being, and kind of a different kind of version. So one of the interesting wrinkles, selfishly, that I want to ask you, that I think is one of the best parts of the book, and why I'm curious, and I think a lot of people are going to be intrigued, is having a father who was practicing faith, and that religion and all that stuff was such a big part of it. You're there at these baseball games, and you're a questioning Jew. You're a guy who's, questioning his own faith. Tell us and our audience a little bit about what that was like, having a father, a father who's not even a rabbi, just wants his son or daughter to marry usually within the faith and have similar types of ideals. Even, the religion of baseball. If you were a White Sox fan, your dad could have been upset at you just for that.
It'd be worse if I married outside the faith. If I married a Sox fan, I think.
But tell us a little bit about that relationship and what that was like, and what you learned from all these extra innings with your dad, and this time you spent when it comes to the religious part.
Yeah, a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. He's a very practical guy. Obviously, when you're ministering in places like Fargo, North Dakota, Windsor, Ontario, Canada, Terre Haute, Indiana, you kind of understand that there's a world that lives outside your synagogue. I think one of the drawbacks to practicing on Long Island, to be honest with you, was that there was a synagogue every 2 blocks, almost like Starbucks, right?
Right.
And so, getting your religion was pretty easy. He liked that people had to kind of work at religion in Iowa, and he liked that on every Friday night the temple was full. But he also encouraged people to explore their faith. He loved when someone came to him and challenged. Hey, Rabbi, I'm having a crisis of confidence. I lost a family member, and what kind of God would let me do that? And he loved talking people through that emotion. But what he did come to me in the game that I showed you the ticket, he asked me about, what would I do? Am I going to continue to be Jewish, to practice Judaism? I actually said to him, I said, Dad, I'll always be Jewish. I love being Jewish. I love our heritage. But one of the things he never did was force down your throat the liturgy. He never said, well, if you don't read Torah every day, if you don't read from the prayer book, if you don't come to services, a lot of what he said was in your heart.
Yeah.
And so to him, and we joked that day, and I'll never forget it, because I said, I just don't feel comfortable walking into a synagogue, sitting and reading blindly from a book. He goes, you have to feel faith where you are. And I said, well, I'm at Wrigley Field, and this is where I feel the most faithful. And we joked a little bit about how it's really hard to have faith when you're a Cub fan. But he said, listen, this is where you practice. And as long as you're true to yourself and you're true to your heart, I'm proud of you.
It's a beautiful message and a beautiful thing, and tying into what you do, because you've hit such a the apex of your field, you and Marc, and it's a beautiful story just how you guys have risen together from he was a Drexel student working, I think, at the White Dog Cafe and doing brunch stuff, and you were even working at Aramark and different investment banks and doing things in their dining space, but then together through like a chance meeting with his brother, you link up, and then next thing you know, you guys are starting Vetri Cucino, which takes the place of where Lebec Finn used to be in Philadelphia. Is a very famous location, and you guys, it's a grind. You think for the storied history and how interwoven you guys are into the culture of Philadelphia now. That first meeting and getting that first location going, it's maxing out credit cards. It's going to different banks for loans. The awning, I think I read in an interview, wasn't even, you said, like, even functioning. Like, there's so much disaster. So there's probably a lot of similarities when you're translating success from writing a book to, starting a venture in business and becoming successful in that domain. So successful where you guys end up selling a lot of your restaurants to Urban Outfitters. So tell us a little bit what you've learned. I'm sure a lot of these are testaments to your father. When you're reflecting on Extra Innings being out and knowing about the type of man he was and the lessons you've learned from him, what are the few things that everybody can implement in their life that you took from your father that has informed your success in business?
Well, so I mean, obviously the cliched one is, man plans and God laughs. Fortitude, the ability to have some faith, stick-to-itiveness, but also the fact that we rely on our brothers and sisters to do things, right? Nobody did this alone. I joke, you mentioned me and Mark's success. It was a 25-year overnight success. We waited 107 years for the Cubs to win a World Series. But we stayed with it. We never gave up. We retooled every year. One of the things that Mark and I talk about a lot is the reason why now 26 years in, Vetri continues to be full every night and continues to hopefully impress our patrons and exceed expectations is because it feels new every time you walk in. We've changed one thing. We've changed a piece of art, or we've changed the menu, or we've changed the wine list, or even a style of service. And over the course of 2.5 decades, we figured out how to keep it fresh.
More Dry Heat after the break. You're watching Dry Heat with Mike Davis.
The Vegas connection here, because being here in Vegas, you guys are starting to have such a big footprint here in town. Of course, everything you're doing with Stations Casinos and, the Fertitta family and all that stuff. So tell us a little bit about, how Vegas took, because that's where you guys really took the next step. You have such a cultured and you're homegrown in this Philly sense, but now we're starting to see all these places that started in Philadelphia are now making their way here to the desert into Vegas. So tell us a little bit about how much planning and how much thought went into that. When was the first conception you guys had? Like, we want to bring our ideas to Vegas.
It's funny because, you know a little bit about us. You would never think we would be the type of guys who would come to Vegas. It's not our speed. We're pretty methodical. We're pretty small. Our restaurants tend to be on the smaller side. Vegas tends to do things on a grand fashion. And it's certainly fun. It was another series of events, not dissimilar from my meeting with Adam Vetri, who introduces me to his brother, who ends up becoming my business partner. But we were thinking about what's next for us. We've been doing some good things here. We had the transaction with Urban Outfitters, as you alluded to. And a friend of ours called and said, these guys from Stations Casinos, and we love the fact that Stations appeals to the local crowd.
Right.
We've built an entire reputation on having regulars, and being in a hotel that's very busy is good for business from a dollar perspective, but building relationships isn't always easy in a transient environment. And knowing that the Fertitta family really caters to people who live out in Vegas for the most part, or at least somewhat local, really appealed to us. That was one of the first things that said, yeah, let's take that meeting. The other thing was really more of a happenstance thing when our friend said to Lorenzo Fertitta, hey, I'd like you to meet my friend Mark. If you want an Italian restaurant, don't go anywhere else. Go see Mark. And he said, ironically enough, my son's graduating from Villanova. We have reservations at his restaurant next week. This is the craziest thing. So he came in and Mark cooked for him and they hit it off. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, we were on a flight out to visit the Palms that they had just bought at the time.
Right.
And we just, we got back on the plane a few days later. Mark says, we're doing this deal, aren't we? I said, I think we are. They've been very nice to us. They've been a really great, patient, and they've learned with us how we operate. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's a cool thing because it's not, the typical celebrity chef who has a show on television kind of vibe. Like, you guys are different, and that's why it is such a perfect marriage between you guys and Stations, because locals here, people who watch Fox 5, Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, they're at the casinos all the time. They're going to the restaurants. So to have that local connection is a big deal. So from your first book, Front of House, which was Front of House, subtitle, Restaurant Manners, Misbehaviors, and Secrets. You started off as a maitre d', as a general manager, kind of working as a business partner. What's so fascinating, I know you're a big sports guy, of course, with all we've been talking about, the Vetri Benjamin tree in a lot of ways is kind of like the Andy Reid tree, where in coaching, and it's kind of like, or Mike Holmgren, it's like a tree where all these guys start, you know, uh, pickling off from all the different types of coaching hires. And then the next thing you know, all these guys become their own head coach. So like Andy Reid, it was Sean McDermott and Ron Rivera and, John Harbaugh and all these guys who worked as assistants, John Gruden, all these people worked under Andy Reid, Mike Holmgren and all this stuff and became their own guy. Well, Michael Solomonov is a guy like that now who's also starting to make his way here with Federal Donuts, someone you're intimately involved with in a business you know very well. So it's fascinating. What was the culture like as a sports connection here to the restaurant? What was it that you guys were doing that kind of fostered that type of environment? Because I think that's a really special thing. Everybody wants to grow and be their own man and do their own thing. But just like in coaching, it's like, we saw what happened to the Eagles after Steichen left and Jonathan Gannon left. It's hard to keep pieces together when you lose that culture. So tell us what you think about that and how similar you think that is to coaching in professional sports.
It's extremely similar, as you alluded to, but with one major dissimilarity, and that's that we're not in competition, right? So, losing Jonathan Gannon was a big deal, right? We needed him here. We needed to find a replacement because we needed to win the Super Bowl, which we did.
Yes.
But we actually, from the very beginning, looked at ourselves as kind of, my wife used to call it the teaching hospital of restaurants. We would bring you in, we would train you, and we would encourage you to leave us.
But come on,
point.
not every restaurant is like that, right, Jeff?
No, but that's the ethos we have.
Why was that the ethos you had? What was it about you guys?
Because people did that for both me and Mark in our careers. What's next for you? And if it's not with me, that's okay, as long as you are set up for success. I'm going to give you, actually, you mentioned Mike Salamano. I'll give you that as the perfect example. Mike was a line cook for us at Vetri. He was, I think, 21 years old, 20 maybe. And he came to me one day, and I'm the front of the house guy. He's a line cook. But we talked. We had a little tiny staff back then. Everybody ate dinner together. And that's the other thing. Your sports analogy has worked. Mark actually calls our group the squad. We're a squad, la squadra in Italian. So he's like, well, we have a perfect squadra. And he likes having a team, and that permeated everyone. But Mike came to me one day and he said, "Hey Jeff, one day I'm going to be my own boss. I don't know anything about business. I know about cooking. Can you help me?" And every Tuesday while he worked for us, he came in early and we sat and we wrote a business plan. I taught him how to read a P&L. I taught him how to do a balance sheet. And now it's come full circle in that I'm helping him with the expansion of Federal Donuts and Chicken. I didn't realize it was going to become a full-time gig, but it has, and I'm really enjoying it.
Dry Heat with Mike Davis will be right back.
What are some of the things you took from your father that you're using with your daughters, and things advice you would give to people at home, and maybe what they would glean from Extra Innings? What would that answer be?
Yeah. So a few things, and a few things from my own experience as a father too. One is you can't just coexist with your child. Do things with them, interact with them. You're not there to be their best friend. You're there to be a coach, a parent, a mentor at any given time. You're also their rabbi. And allow that to happen. You'll organically find that which you find in common, and don't force it. If your child isn't a Cub fan, God forbid, you find that which you do enjoy doing with them, and do it with gusto.
I like that.
My younger daughter is a dancer. Was a competitive dancer for several years. So any opportunity I had to go see her dance was great. But then we also went and enjoyed things like dance or ice, Disney on Ice for several years. That was our thing. And by the way, she loves going to Cubs games as well, but she does that for me.
Right.
And so it's really it's important to find that which you enjoy. The other thing is, don't rush it, right? I noted in the book, my wife and I listen to a lot of country music, and there's a line in one of our favorite songs called "Let Them Be Little." But let them be little. Well, allow them to stay little, because they're only that way for some time. And then ultimately they're not. My wife and I became empty nesters last year. And, we've enjoyed starting to date each other again because we're alone, but, we miss them. And I don't have any regrets of the things I missed. And the last thing you want is your kid to leave for college and say, if only. I will tell you, there's a story in extra innings where I did let my dad down at one point because he had planned. Um, because the first game we ever went to was a Cubs Reds game, we also had a really big affinity for the Big Red Machine. So
Right.
anytime any of those guys, Morgan, Bench, Rose, did anything, we tried to and when Johnny Bench made it into the Hall of Fame, I was in college, and my father made reservations for us to go stay in Cooperstown for the weekend, and I ended up working that weekend and not coming home for it, and that's a regret. And I have very few regrets in life, but to be honest with you, I will always live with the regret that I let him down that night.
Listen, we have the masculine energy, but it's good to be sensitive human beings, to have the yin and the yang, and to appreciate all those things.
More Dry Heat after the break.
Listen, it was so great speaking with you, Jeff Benjamin. Make sure you go check out Extra Innings, a memoir of fathers, sons, fandom, and fate. And then listen, we are the service industry here in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. We know service unlike anybody else. So front of the house, another great book to check out from Jeff Benjamin. That's his space. And listen, we always love everything that Stations Casinos is doing when it comes to Vetri Kachina, Palms, Fiorella at Durango, and of course Osteria at Red Rock. So Jeff, thank you so much. Go to check the book out on babybook. What is it? Book Baby?
Book Baby.
Book Baby, and Amazon.com for Extra Innings. Good luck to the Cubs. And I think one day in the future, I would like to see a Federal Donuts at Wrigley Field. That would be a full circle thing.
You and me both. That would be incredible. I think it can happen. It can happen. Maybe there'll be one at the Las Vegas Athletics Stadium.
Hey, that's going to be coming up eventually too.
I'm looking forward to that.
The great Jeff Benjamin. Thanks so much. Go give your father a call after you hear this interview, everybody. Thank you, Jeff.
Please do.
All
Go
right.
Cubs, go.
Go Cubs, go. Thank you so much for watching Dry Heat with Mike Davis. Go to our YouTube page, Silver State Sports, to hear our complete interviews.